Hi, I'm Marcia Grant, and this is Eric Nicholson. We are the founders of the Cash Flow Breakfast Club in Baltimore. We are interviewing Jim Holderness, and we are super excited to interview him. He is an attorney, and he helps people understand how tax liens in Maryland work. So we're going to interview him. Hopefully, eventually, he'll come to the Cash Flow Breakfast Club and be one of our speakers. So I'm looking forward to that. Jim, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Marcia and Eric. I really appreciate the opportunity today. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing law here in Maryland, Baltimore, since about 2001. I work with real estate investors mostly, and I help them with all of their legal issues. But one of the things that investors often ask me about is property acquisition. And so about 2007 or 2008, I started handling tax sale foreclosures for investors. And I've been doing that ever since. And I find tax sale foreclosures, if you are the right type of, I'll just say, real estate professional, it takes some knowledge about the real estate world. That tax sale investing is a good opportunity for people to find different sources of properties.
Okay, if you can tell us, because I know real estate is different from state to state, and it seems like you indicated that there were tax lien sales and sometimes tax deed sales. So how is Maryland different, or how does it function?
Excellent. Great question, Marcia. So the difference is Maryland is what's called a tax lien state. I'll use Delaware as an example. Delaware is a tax deed state. And the difference is they both are tax sales, meaning that Maryland goes through a tax sale process. We can talk about the reasons for that too, and all jurisdictions do. In Maryland, when a property goes to tax sale, what you are buying is the city or the county. They are selling the tat that the homeowner owes for their property taxes. In Maryland, the city or the county, what they're doing is they're selling you that debt. And when they sell you that debt, it comes in the form of a tax sale certificate. And that tax sale certificate allows you, as the holder of that debt, certain rights. And one of those rights is after a certain amount of time, you can actually foreclose on the property and obtain the property with that tax lien certificate. That's a little different than like a tax deed state like Delaware, for example. Delaware, if you go to a tax sale auction and you buy a property, you get the deed. That's it. Like the state has already gone through the process of the foreclosure. In Maryland, when you buy a tax lien certificate, what that means is you have to go through the Maryland tax sale foreclosure process in order to get the deed.
Okay, so what happens if there are other liens on the property, like a mortgage?
Excellent. My best customers and my educated customers. And so, Marcia, you are on top of it. When you buy a tax lien certificate, what happens is that becomes the first lien. So if somebody has judgments against them from creditors, or if they have a mortgage, which is a common thing, these tax sale foreclosures, what happens is when you go through the process, you give notice to the lender, the mortgage company, you give notice to all judgment creditors and say, hey, look, you have the right to redeem these taxes on behalf of this borrower, on behalf of this property owner. But if you don't, the city of Baltimore or the county in Maryland, they're going to issue a deed to me free and clear of all liens and encumbrances, meaning I will wipe out your mortgage and I will wipe out all your judgments against this property owner if you don't pay the taxes that I've paid. The short answer is after the foreclosure, you get the house free and clear of all liens and encumbrances.
Okay, interesting. So my other question is, what rights do the owner have to redeem their property after someone has purchased the tax lien?
Okay, great. So we'll just start with the tax sale auction. So a tax sale auction, for example, is going to happen in May of this year, May and June, depending on the jurisdiction here in Maryland. And it's a public auction. And if you are the winning, we can go into the auction process if you want. But to answer your question is, when somebody wins that tax sale certificate auction at the auction, and we'll just say it's May 20th, because that's when it was last year. So May 20th, auction comes, and you're the winner of the certificate. The way Maryland is set up, there's a 6-month redemption period, meaning that the owner of the house, they'll have 6 months in order to pay you back, you meaning the tax sale certificate holder, you purchased their debt. They'll have 6 months to pay that back without having to incur any legal fees and costs of a foreclosure. So the city put that in several years ago just to give homeowners a break, because when, the taxes owed might only be $2,000 or $1,500, but when you add in $3,000 of legal fees, all of a sudden people weren't able to save their home. Okay, they could afford the taxes, they can't afford their taxes plus all these legal fees. So the state put in, hey, look, we're going to give people 6 months. We've given them notice in January your taxes are due. We've given them notice in February your taxes are due. We've given them notice that your property is going to tax sale foreclosure foreclosure. And despite all of that, the people still didn't pay. We're going to still give them another 6 months to try to save their home from this tax sale foreclosure. So that's kind of how it works. They have 6 months of a period before there's any legal fees and costs. But Marcia, I'll finish this and hopefully I just want to finish this one last thing.
Okay.
During the foreclosure process, that in itself, it's not going to start until, let's say, January of next year, okay? Because you have to wait 6 months is November, and then it's 2 months of a notice period. So we're talking about January before you can even start the tax sale foreclosure. And the tax sale foreclosure itself can take 4 to 6 months. So those property owners, they actually have the right to redeem their property to avoid losing it all the way up through that tax sale foreclosure process and the entry of a judgment foreclosing the right of redemption. So that means that a property owner probably has over a year to pay these taxes to save their house, but they're going to incur all the legal fees and costs that are associated with the process.
Okay, that's interesting. So it sounds like an investor's money might be tied up for easily a year before they may be able to actually foreclose and get the property. Can you tell us what the returns may look like if, with their money being tied up for that long?
Okay, excellent. So I'm happy to answer this question. So let's talk about I guess the better way to do it is to talk about how the auction process works, okay? Because this is a big deal. So we're going to do a quick example. I'm going to just make up a property in Baltimore City, for example. So we have a property in Baltimore City at 1200 Monument Street, and interested investor in this property, and you've determined that, the as-is value for this property is $60,000. The ARV is $250,000, and I can get this property renovated for $80,000. So in the end, I'm going to bid $50,000 on this property to hope that I can get it cheaper. Okay, that's fine. So you bid $50,000, and let's say you won the auction. Fantastic. You are the tax sale certificate holder with a winning bid of $50,000. Okay. Now, the trick to this is that an investor is not out $50,000 at this point. Okay. When you bid and you win your bid for that tax sale certificate and you bid $50,000, I'm just going to keep it simple right now. The city's going to collect your taxes, the taxes that are due. So let's say that the taxes that were due from the homeowner at 1200 Monument Street were $2,000 and you bid $50,000. Okay. On the day of the auction, the city's going to take the $2,000 out of your bank account, but you don't have to pay the balance of that $48,000 until you pick up the deed a year later. So your money's going to be tied up for a year, we'll just say. But the amount of that money is only the amount of the taxes that you had to pay in order to purchase the tax sale certificate. So you will have money tied up, but it won't be big chunks like 50 grand. It's going to be, so if you had $50,000 to invest, and we talk about this in a class that I give, well, that $50,000 that you invest, you might end up being able to buy 25 certificates, okay, all with that potential equity in there. So one thing about tax sale certificate purchasing is, yes, your money's going to be tied up, but you have the opportunity to control, say, 25 properties at $2,000 each and a $50,000 bid, rather than one property with a $50,000 bid.
Okay, thank you for that. I have 2 more questions. One of them is, what are some, and I know Eric had 2 questions after me. So what are some common mistakes that you see new tax sale investors make?
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, what new tax sale investors, common mistakes for them is, one, I'm going to start with the big thing, is they don't go and look at the properties, okay? So if you were a tax sale investor, the way to get it started is the city and the counties are going to come out with property addresses this month, okay? In March, the property lists are being put together now. So now that we're in April, registration for the auctions and the property lists are going to come out. And what an investor needs to do for tax sales is understand that, they're competing against a lot of bidders, for one. It's a competitive, I'll say it's a competitive market. So we'll just say that much. So what people who are bidding need to understand is that they have to go look at the house, okay? I can't tell you how many clients I've had who bought a house, they bought a tax sale certificate because they went on Google Maps and they saw the property, and then what happens is they got the certificate and they went and looked at the property and there's no roof or there's no back to the property at all. And essentially at that point, they're just going to end up giving away their, just forfeiting their money. So one thing is, people who are interested in this, you have to do the work, okay? And that's just the reality of it, because the people you're competing against, they're going to have people running around the city, taking pictures for them, front and backs of the houses, just to make sure that they're in decent shape or whatever shape they're in. So making sure you know the asset before you buy it, that's number one. Number two is you have to stick to your numbers. So if a property is worth, $40,000, you can't bid $50,000 for that property. And people get all upset because the way the auctions go is they're going to go in waves. They go in like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. And I've noticed that bidders will go into part 1 with a bidding strategy. This is how much I'm going to bid on these properties. I'm not going to go over that amount. And what they find is they didn't win any bids for the entire whole first segment. So what do? They get a little nervous most kind of like gamblers. I want to catch up on the Monday night game. So you know what? I'm not getting any action right now. I'm going to have to raise my bids by 5 or 10%, whatever that might be. That's when people start to get in trouble because they start to chase the game. I want to win the auction, but they do that at the expense of sticking to their numbers. I'm going to choose one of my clients as an example. He's an expert at tax sale investing. He's been doing it for many, many years. He lives in California, and his bidding strategy is, Jim, I don't even look at the properties. I just bid a tiny little bit amount, a lot of properties, and I pray that some fall through the cracks. And just to give an example of his numbers, he bid on about 120 properties. He won 8 of them. 3 of them redeemed. He has 5 left. And so for him, he's not very actively involved. He's like, Jim, this is a good deal for me. If any of these 5 hit, I've had a good year. And if they don't, okay, I'll wait till next year. But he's resigned himself to the fact that if I don't get a good deal, I don't want a deal because I'd rather just wait till next year. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
it absolutely did.
Information in there. So.
It did. Thank you. So my other question is, so my concern is about people that are elderly and low income. Certainly the elderly, of course, their income becomes fixed, and a lot of times they just cannot afford just the basic necessities. And of course, sometimes these taxes go up over the years. So are there any protections for the elderly or low income in these scenarios of these tax sales?
Yeah. So one of the things that Baltimore City is doing is, I'm going to speak to Baltimore City. I can't speak to all the counties. Okay. There's 24 of them in Maryland. But one of the things that Baltimore City is doing, for example, is they're not putting up certain properties for tax sale auction. So if they're determining that it's owner occupied, they're pulling some of these from the list so that they can't, I guess, in order to try to protect these individuals. I don't think they're going to the far extent to determine whether or not they're elderly or not. Just the fact that, hey, you know what, these are homeowners residing in the property. And so us as a city, we're making the determination that, you know what, we're going to sell all the other houses and try to get the investors to go for those rather than Mrs. Jones's house. Okay. There are also, I don't have the programs available in front of me, but there are some programs in and around the city to help homeowners who are facing tax sale with regards to some kind of financial help. That's just, I don't have that information in front of me today. Maybe before your April 10th meeting, I can try to find some information and pass it along to you and Eric.
Thank you. Okay, Eric, on you.
Yes, I have a few questions. And in regards to tax protections, don't quote me on that. I don't know that for sure, but I believe in Maryland, if you are of the retirement age, a property valued under certain threshold, which I think around $400,000 is kind of like tax exempt or protected, or you can apply for some kind of exemption. So if you are in a retirement fixed income and you are facing a tax lien auction, I believe if you move to a property that is valued below a certain level, you can avoid that. But we will, get more clarification for our viewers on one of our next podcasts on that. And I believe also there is a protection for the veterans. And unfortunately, I have seen this happen one time where I was looking for a property. Investor was suing the homeowner, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. And I found the homeowner in a nursing home. Unfortunately, he had advanced stage of Alzheimer's. He could not make any decision, didn't even understand what was going on. But he was a veteran. So I contacted his daughter, and she was able to contact the Veterans Affairs here. And as a veteran, and he was discharged, and he was in active duty in Vietnam, and he was honorably discharged. So as a veteran, I believe he was in combat. He was wounded in combat. He was not supposed to pay any taxes, just fell through the cracks. But there are protections like that. So, and we will clarify them in one of our next podcasts. My question would be about the equity stripping in particular, because what I have noticed is that a lot of the cases are being brought by various attorneys generals all over the country, and they say like you can't buy properties under certain amount if you know that they are going on auction, or if somebody is bidding higher than certain amount. And in that context, my question is, let's say I found the homeowner and he didn't redeem his property within 6 months as he could have, and now he's out of the options. Now his taxes probably amount owed is doubled, and I can still help him redeem it. Maybe he owes $6,000 in taxes, another $6,000 in legal fees. I can say, okay, let me pay $12,000 and redeem the property on your behalf. I will have some sub to agreement, and then would you be willing to sell me that property for X amount of dollars, whatever that might be? And let's say he agrees, and that amount is less than what investor bid and premium bid. I know that in case of foreclosures, that would be a red flag. And that would be an issue there, right? It could be pursued as an equity stripping scheme. But does that apply to tax lien purchases, Jim?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Eric, because having worked with investors in the early 2000s, that whole equity stripping thing with the mortgage foreclosures became a real problem, no doubt. And the state of Maryland fixed that by having people get, a licensing program so that you could go and you could actually talk to people who are in those situations. I don't believe that there's any, and I will check for you. If I'm wrong, I'll certainly let you know, but I don't believe the state of Maryland has caught up with the tax sale equity stripping as they have in the mortgage foreclosure stripping. So at this point, if you can find that strategy where you can work that out with people, I don't know of any legal impediment to that at this time. I'm sure that as more people talk about it and it happens to more people, then the state might, certainly take a look at it and try to see if there's something they should do in Annapolis for it. But at this time, I'm not aware of any similar restrictions on working using your example of some homeowner they're just struggling and they have an option of, there's some cash here as opposed to no cash here. So I'll just say this. I don't know of anything right now legally, and it might be a way to find properties. I will say this though, on a side note, and I think I might have mentioned this to you, Eric, in a private conversation. I have a client right now who's being sued. He's a tax sale investor. He's not being sued. He was brought into a lawsuit because he purchased a tax sale certificate and there's equity in that property. And so now there's a lawsuit right now that's working its way through the Circuit Court of Maryland in Baltimore about whether or not these tax sales, maybe I shouldn't even have raised it. What they're doing is somebody's just challenging the constitutionality of the tax sale foreclosure process, just generally. I don't expect it. There's cases around the country that have upheld this as a way for jurisdictions, whether cities or counties, to be able to collect their needed tax revenue. So I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But the purpose of me raising that is just that, anytime there's anything that relates to like what Marcia was talking about earlier, the, elderly homeowners, you're talking about veteran homeowners. These are just stories that make it to the newspapers and they make it to a politician and then it just gets in their ear of things. And there's a big lawsuit. So people are going to be talking about, well, there's a big lawsuit, whether it's constitutional or not. So it just kind of gets things starting, in motion about whether or not there needs to be any kind of action taken by the legislative branch. And at this time, there just hasn't been. So if you can find those people at this time, it might be a good opportunity for an investment. It might be different next year or the year after, but for now, you can proceed to try to find those people like you did, Aaron.
Okay, great. I would like to invite you personally to our event, which is going to take place on April the 10th at 836 Guilford Road at the place called La Familia Soundstage Place in Baltimore, Maryland. We very much look forward to seeing you there. And I think expertise and knowledge that you bring forward in this particular niche, it's invaluable. It's great. A lot of people don't even know about the tax lien sales. And if they do, they don't know any intricacies, any nuances of how to pursue it and what would be a right strategy to do it. And I think just one strategy that you mentioned, sounds pretty good strategy to me, right? You said someone just makes bids on tons of those properties. And if he wins one, he is happy. Otherwise, it's not going to overbid. I mean, that little advice that came from you, I think it's great. I mean, it opens up a door to, opens up your way of pursuing the tax lien auction. So I very much look forward for you to come and share your knowledge, wealth of your knowledge and expertise with other members of our club that we will be launching on April the 10th. And with that, I will thank you very much for your time, for being here. And I will pass on to Marcia if she has any questions. If not, we will conclude.
I don't have any more questions, but thank you very much. And we look forward to having you on the 10th. And hopefully you will come as a guest speaker at some point. Thank you.
That'll be wonderful. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate this for both of you. I give classes to real estate professionals, kind of like you're doing. And I'll definitely promote your class on April 10th. If you'd like, I vote it to the people that I've been working with, because I believe in sharing the information. That's what helps everybody. So you guys are doing a great job, and I really appreciate the opportunity to participate today. I look forward to seeing you again on the 10th, and then we'll see where things go from there. But I'm very excited. So thank you both very much.